Okay, looks like everything's working. Make sure the audio's working. Got everything set up here. I actually finally got my email ready for this video request, guys. Normally I'm like really unorganized and I'm like, holy crap, I'm scattering all over the place to try to find everything. Okay, this request is, this person is anonymous. They don't want their name mentioned. And let's take a look at the question, the request. By the way, I hope you guys are having a great Thursday night, Friday morning, wherever you live in the world. Here in Ohio, the weather's starting to get really shitty again. It's like 33, 32 degrees. We're real windy. Okay, let's dive right in here. Take a look at the email. Hi, Justin explains everything. I was really curious what your views are, your opinions and beliefs on the division that seems to be taking place, especially, hold on, let me read that, especially more within these last like 7 to 8 years. It seems to have gotten worse in terms of a lot of separation amongst various different types of groups, ethnic groups, blacks, whites, international foreigners, even females, and the LGBT community. All this different separation. What your take is, what your view is. Do you think this is an organic thing, like, are just people naturally now having all of this? I don't know if you want to call it hatred, but indifference, in different groups, or is this something that is like false and created by, government or mainstream media, whatever? Okay, I think I kind of get what your question is. If I got it right, your question is, do I think all of this division today that we're experiencing, we got the Black Lives Matter groups. Obviously, we got, LGBT community seems to also be way more stronger in their beliefs than, say 20, 25 years ago, in terms of them actually standing up against people that are against them, standing up for themselves. Obviously, you also got, the, female rights, Women's Act movement, with, which has been a big thing, especially these last, again, it seems like more like 10 years now, 8 to 10 years, it's really taken off with all of these various different groups, people that identify with this particular group or that group, taking a stand against people that are, they feel discriminated against them. Like, what's my personal belief? I think it might be a combination of a couple of different things, but I really do think that the MSM, mainstream media, really does play a huge role. They, large role in creating a lot of the outrage and anger amongst these groups. Because if you stop and think about it, the MSM, the mainstream media, they really have a lot of control over how we feel, as citizens, whether it's an American citizen like myself or even, people in Europe, Asia, all over the world. So many of us watch the news, whether it be on television, on our smartphone, on the computer, internet, tablet, whatever. We get our news and from all of these different large corporations, whether it be Yahoo News on the internet, MSN, even AOL. I think some people still follow AOL, America Online. And then, of course, you got the big ones, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, I really do think that the media, which is owned by a lot of these large, even bigger corporations and these multi-billionaires that fund these media outlets, those guys, I feel like, do have an interest in what kind of news they broadcast. Like, in other words, the guys that own CNN, the people that are over CNN, I think most of us would agree that they have different policies and guidelines at CNN that they have to follow. In other words, they can't be talking about pro-Republicans. They can't be pro-Republican because that's a large Democratic network and audience. Same thing with Fox. The people that own and control Fox, I'm sure they have their own guidelines, rules, where at Fox they can't be constantly bragging about Democrats. Their job is to bash the Democrats and pump up the Republican side. So I feel like these media outlets, whether they believe or not what they're saying, I have no idea. I have no idea whether the actual anchors and the guys on those channels believe what they're saying is true. I just know they feed people a lot of garbage, a lot of BS, a lot of bullcrap. They feed these people. And so many people are so naive and gullible when it comes to watching these networks, and they have such a tunnel vision, closed mind, where like all they watch is maybe CNN every day, or all they watch every day is maybe Fox or MSNBC or whatever. And when they get this information from these outlets, I feel like it's harmful, because especially if they're just watching one outlet, one network, I feel like that's very harmful. Because if, let's say, all you watch every day is CNN, and every single day all they talk about is how bad Republicans are and Democrats are number one, and pumping out all of these different pro-democratic values, well, you're probably not going to have a very balanced mind when it comes to your views on politics, social issues, all that kind of stuff. You're probably going to have a flawed mind, because all you do is watch one outlet. Same thing for the guy that just watches Fox every day. Same thing for him. He's going to have a flawed outlook on things, because all he watches is Fox. He doesn't watch anything else or read anything else. So I do believe that the MSM mainstream media does have a huge impact on these different social issues that we've been having these last 7, 8, 9 years. Black Lives Matter, LGBT community, their rights, women's rights, and immigration, different immigration policies. The division that it's been causing. I do believe that the mainstream media does, in large part, play a role. Like, think about it. If there were no mainstream media outlets, huge corporation news broadcasting networks like CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all of these, NBC, CBS, if they didn't exist, and all we had was just our local news broadcasting networks and stations, like me, I live, more or less close to the Dayton, Ohio area. If all I had was my local Dayton news and maybe Cincinnati news and nothing else, none of this crap from Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, just local Ohio-based news, chances are the people in this area, including myself, would probably even have a slightly different, or maybe even a drastic different outlook on the world around us, because the only information we would be getting is just our local news. We wouldn't be hearing all these crazy stories, about, Antifa and all of these other wild things that have been going on, and, how our government's doing this, our government's doing that. We wouldn't hear these stories and be able to relate to these people. And I think that's a big reason why my parents, and for a lot of you out there, your parents out there that grew up like my parents did in the 60s and 70s, I think the reason why they, at least my parents, I can't speak for everybody, they don't seem to have all of this, anger like a lot of the younger people today do, in terms of Black Lives Matter, LGBT community, women's rights, abortions, and all of that stuff, all these different things. My parents don't have that kind of anger, because when they were growing up as kids, they just had local news broadcasting networks. They wasn't fed all of this crazy information, from a young age, that, you got to believe in this, you got to believe in that, you got to be for this, against that. They didn't grow up with that, in that kind of an environment. So I think that's why today, in their 60s now, they're more mellow, more calm, because they weren't, fed all of this crazy information that the mainstream media feeds, young kids today and young adults today. So I really think it does depend. And if you want to go even further back, my grandparents who were born in the 20s, it was even better for them because hell, I don't even think they even had hardly any kind of news networking stations when they were growing up. They were lucky to just listen to the radio for broadcasting. So if that's if they had electricity, they were lucky to have a radio. But I think in this modern world that we're living in now, this society where you can get your news, your information literally at the touch of your finger on your smartphone or tablet or computer or whatever. People today, they scroll, I think they scroll through the news, they see a headline, and they don't even read the article. They just go with the headline and they're like, oh, that's all the information I need. That's another problem. Today, people don't do enough reading. And I think that's why so many of us are brainwashed and easily manipulated. Going back to what I was saying earlier about all of these different issues that we're having, social issues, whether it be gun laws, abortion laws, Black Lives Matter, LGBT community, women's rights, all of that stuff, the Me Too movement. So many people don't even sit down and even read or investigate these issues, these social issues, these topics. They just look at a headline, and they're like, oh, that's all the information I need. I don't even need to read the article. The headline says this, so I'm going to run with that. Kind of like a meme. We're in a society now where everything's about memes, Oh, look at that meme. It must be true because it's a meme. So, I don't know. I mean, I know this is kind of a long answer I'm giving you in your question that you're asking me about how do I feel about the division, which is basically the separation of these various different groups. We're all kind of separated nowadays with what we believe in, and if you don't believe in one thing, well, that means you got to believe in something else then, Instead of, you can't be in the middle, indifferent anymore now. You got to pick a side, left, right, up, down, white, black, abortion or not abortion, and that drives me crazy that you have to pick sides. You shouldn't have to pick a side. You should just be able to think for yourself, say, hey, you know what, maybe I'm against abortion, or what, for this particular reason, or maybe I'm for abortion under certain circumstances, like, maybe the woman was forced, in bed with somebody and had no, she couldn't control the situation. I'm just using that as a small example. But nobody wants to ever think that way anymore. It's almost like nowadays, I feel like everything in life is like a quiz, like a test. Remember back when you were in school, you get multiple choices, A, B, C, or D. And I feel like it's like that nowadays where you have to pick one of those four. It's got to be A, B, C, or D. And if you don't pick one of them, or you say, I disagree with all of these, you fail. You don't get it past the test. Well, I feel like that's how it is nowadays in our social world that we live in. You got to pick an option. And if you don't pick that one option or this specific option, they're like, wait, what's your problem? Why aren't you picking a side? Why aren't you choosing one of these multiple choices? And I think that's a very flawed way of thinking, not a very, intelligent way of thinking. Like not everything is black and white. Not everything is A, B, C, or D. Not everything is 1, 2, 3. Things are, different social issues, different social topics, obviously, are more complex than just choosing one side. That's why I did a video a couple days ago about Republicans versus Democrats, and then independents, which is where I fall in that category, in the middle. And I was discussing how what's wrong with our society is everyone feels like you have to be on one side or the other. People don't like it when you're on the fence. They want you to be either over the fence or before the fence. They don't want you to be on the fence thinking, I kind of like a little bit of the left side, some of their ideologies, the way they think, and I kind of like the right a little bit, some of their points that they make. They don't want that. They want you to say, I'm either blue or I'm red. It's one of those two. People don't like it when you are on the fence. Hell, they even make jokes about that. Oh, you're on the fence. And it's never a positive joke. It's always a negative joke. You're on the fence. And so getting back to what I was saying earlier to answer your question about my beliefs on all of this division that we have in our country. And when I say division, I'm not just strictly talking about racial issues or sexual issues or, orientations. I'm talking about all divisions, everything. That even includes upper class compared to middle class, compared to lower class, whites, blacks, Asians, Mexicans, women's rights, Black Lives Matter rights, abortion rights, and laws. That's the kind of division I'm talking about. So I want to be very clear that this type of division I'm speaking of is not a racial type thing. It's everything, all across the board, because that's what division is. That's really all division is. You could make an argument that, people that are, let's just say hypothetically, you're a Republican and you've been a Republican your whole life. You always vote, let's just say red. You always vote red. And you completely block off people that are Democrats, because maybe you don't believe in their way of thinking, their way of life. And next thing you know, your group separates you from Democrats. That's a form of division. It doesn't have to be racial division. It could just be division of indifferences. You have a totally different opinion of life, a different opinion of policies, government policies, laws. That's still division. So to answer your question, I actually do think that most, maybe not all, but probably, I don't know, a good, I'm going to say 75, 80% of division in this society that we're living in today, this modern world of commercialized world, I'm going to say 75 to 80% of division in today's time probably does have a large part to do with mainstream media and what they tell you. They tell you how to think, how to dress, how to look, how to wear your hair. They basically spoon feed you all of this information so that you don't even have to use your brain. You could just, read a magazine. They say blonde-headed chicks get the most men. So what do a lot of women do? They go out, they dye their hair blonde because they want to be a blonde. Or maybe they tell men, if you're losing your hair or you're bald, that's not attractive, so you better get a hair transplant. So what do most of these guys do? They run out, they get a hair transplant so they could get all the girls. That's what I'm talking about, though. People are brainwashed and controlled, mind control games by the media. That includes the news, network programming, shows on television shows, magazines, these big magazine corporations that, people buy and, they read every month, subscriptions. And these magazines, these news outlets, these media stations, they always tell people this is acceptable, this is socially acceptable, this is not socially acceptable. And that's definitely a form of manipulation. And again, I think that all does basically, in a way, help create the division that we have in today's society. It's not 100% directed to division, but staying on this topic, it does play a large role in creating all of the division that we have, because let's say you're working at a job and the latest trend, the latest style is like today, these, what are these, skinny jeans or whatever, these skinny pants that these guys like to wear, which, by the way, I can't wear skinny jeans. Anyways, and then some new employee gets hired in. He doesn't like skinny jeans. He's wearing not real baggy jeans, but just average fitted, comfortable jeans. Well, he's now instantly going to be, pointed out because he's not wearing skinny jeans. That is a form of division, and it is created by network programming, television, internet, magazines. It's created by that because they tell you this is the style that you should really like. You should like this kind of style, not that style. So, in a way, it is a form of, I guess you could call it programming, some sort of, I guess you could call it brainwashing to a degree, telling you how you should look, how you should feel, how you should dress, the kind of women you should date, the kind of men you should date, the kind of shows you should be watching on television, the types of politicians you should be voting for, the types of politicians you should not be voting for. And I feel like we are so controlled by, like I said, these corporations. You could call it whatever you want. You could call it the mainstream media. You could call it network programming. It's great that they call it network programming because it really is a programming device. It programs us how to think. And that's a dangerous thing. That's a bad thing. It's very dangerous. So yes, to answer your question, I think majority of this division and like separation that we have in the world today is in large part orchestrated and created by the mainstream media. So hope that answered your question. I didn't want to go too long here. This has been about a little over 20 minutes, but I just wanted to kind of break it down. That way I'm not giving just a broad answer. I didn't want to just give you a 1 or 2 word answer and say, okay, goodbye. So I think that's going to do it, guys. I need to drink. This stuff is so good. I've told you about it before. It's strawberry and watermelon flavored water. It's natural. It's 0 calories, so you don't have to worry about gaining weight, and it tastes really refreshing. In fact, this is what it comes in. This is the bottle. It's really, really good. Strawberry watermelon. Cheap too. It's like $2.50, $3 for that. You just squirt a little bit in your water. It's great. Okay, guys. I've been going on and on and on here, but I think I pretty much fit everything in to my answer to your question. At least I hope I did. If I didn't, you could send me more feedback asking what you think, or ask me to elaborate a little bit more on my answers, my ideas, my opinions. Okay, guys, I appreciate the support. Please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and if you haven't done it yet, hit the notification bell. That way you're up to date and you know what's going on when I'm doing these videos. If you want me to do a request for you, you can either email it to me in the About section, or you could leave the request down below in the comments. I try to read the comments and do the best that I can with keeping up with you guys. So I think that is going to do it, guys. You guys have a great rest of your night, morning, wherever you live in the world, afternoon, evening. Take care, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys again on the next video. Peace out, everybody.